Hi, I'm Neil Bergman.
And I'm Hayley Bergman. Over the last 10 years, we've helped thousands of fitness professionals to get qualified, learn with simplicity, and coach clients with confidence.
We're the first to say that learning and being a FITPRO doesn't have to be hard work, and that with the right structure, support and resources, you can become a confident and knowledgeable fitness professional that is dedicated to more.
So how do you learn, qualify and kickstart as a FITPRO? This is the FITPRO Sessions Podcast with Parallel Coaching.
Understanding long-term behaviour change for clients, or said differently, the glue that sticks it all together.
Oh, season 8, episode number 10.
We are coming to the finale. It's the final episode for season number 8.
And there's been so much in season 8 that we're going to use this one almost to stick everything together. Like you mentioned, the glue.
Each session has been the glue that sticks it all together, because obviously working with a client, regardless of your discipline, whether it be PT, yoga, Pilates, boot camp, or spinner, X, Y, and Z, you're going to take an exercise approach, which has structured exercise. You're going to take a neat approach, so non-exercise activity thermogenesis, encouraging them to be more active outside of your sessions across the 168 hours of a week.
Yeah.
You're going to focus on nutrition, okay?
Lifestyle
interventions, general advice, helping the client achieve their goal from getting from point A to point B. And each session has been the glue that sticks all that together, which is how you... I suppose my summary for the whole season has been, how do you communicate effectively? What you say and how you say it directly impacts on what your client does or doesn't do.
I suppose you can have the best workout plan in the world or the best nutrition advice that you give your client, but if they don't do it, then they don't get the result. And that's what all of season 8's about, is that behavioural change to do it.
And I believe every client knows what to do. It's just that they don't necessarily do what they know. And we're guilty of this. I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. We can all put our hand up. And so how do we get ourselves first and foremost? Maybe season 8 has been more empowering for you as an individual as it is as your toolbox of development to pass on to your clients.
But I think that's all still really important, because anything that you do yourself also then you can bring across and work with clients, because you've got experience of that. So if you are using what we've spoken about so far in season 8 for yourself, then that's fantastic, because you'll also bring those tools into your toolbox for clients.
Well, we often talk about like make your mess your message. And I don't mean mess as in, often it's language, isn't it? If I say the word mess, what's your initial perception
something
of
that's messy and all over the place?
Untidy. But mess could just be, for me, would just be your overall what life looks like. Okay, it doesn't have to be untidy. It's just that we all have lots of plates spinning. It's been lived in, completely. And so I say, make your mess your message. Perhaps you've used these behaviour change modules or free podcasts to understand more about why you do the things you do. What are the motives behind the reasons you take action or don't take action? The ambivalence inside your head, and unwrangling all of that.
And then doing so,
you actually are equipped with a very strong toolbox, because you've actioned it upon yourself, and now your confidence will go up because you can now talk firsthand of your experience and therefore pass it on to your client.
Yeah, I like it.
So
where are we going on this?
I've got a plan. Here it is. Okay.
That's why I was like, you are in charge.
I've got a number of points. I've plucked out the best bits from the 9 episodes. Okay, so I want to wrap this up today so it leaves you with some closure on behaviour change of like, what do I do now? What's my next step as a FITPRO in order for you to take all of this knowledge and add progression? Okay?
I like that. Okay.
So what would be your takeaway on that without looking at the notes?
My big takeaway from the whole season?
Yeah, in terms of like, how does, a FITPRO listening now, go ahead and take this forwards with progression in order to take action? What could they do?
Yeah, for me, it's about the fact that you can take each of the little techniques, tools, systems, and you might use one of those more than another, but you don't have to choose one.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be like, I'm only ever going to use CBT, or I'm only ever going to use smart goal setting or communication skills. You can choose it almost like, when you go to an Indian and you have a thali. Do you know what I mean by a thali?
An Indian restaurant, you mean?
Yes.
Again, it comes to language because there's deletion there, isn't there? Which we talked about in the NLP.
When you go to an Indian restaurant and you have a thali, whereby you've got lots of little pieces of curries, like little tasters of curries, and you've got like a board of them almost. I love that because it's one meal, but it's little pieces of everything.
Perfect.
And when you're working with a client, it's one experience, but you can use little skill sets and pieces of everything.
So it's
a tally of behaviour change.
So you went straight to food. I'm going to go with this understanding that we used, I think, in the first episode, which was about the context of behaviour change. I was saying, okay, I want to put a nail in the wall, okay, but I don't necessarily have to use a hammer.
Nice.
Okay, I could still use the handle of a screwdriver.
Yeah.
I could use a stone.
Yeah.
I could use anything that is hard that could hit the end of a nail on the head in order to put the nail in the wall. We don't have to use the thing that it's designed for, if that makes sense.
Yes, and similarly, if you want to take that nail out of the wall, you could use like that proper bit on the end of a hammer, whatever that is.
With a proper bit.
You could saw it off. You could pull it off with pliers, but they've all got different roles.
But notice your approach to food and my approach to DIY, okay, all involves taking some level of action.
Yes.
So to move forwards with this progression is to potentially go back through and listen to your favourite episodes of season 8 and think, right, what action am I going to take? What small step, what small process goal could I set and say, right, this week with my clients, you might say, I'm going to focus on building rapport. This week with my clients, I'm going to challenge my clients' detached logic and look at some ambivalence, and I'm going to use the spirit of MI. Maybe this week I'm going to sit down and just analyze my notes that I've taken on my client and place them within the transtheoretical model of change, and therefore you then might be able to assign to some loose degree what tool to use, because if somebody's still in, say, a contemplation stage or is self-sabotaging or is in a relapse, then you might say, well, MI, motivational interviewing, might be more appropriate. But if somebody's in a state of preparation, then you might say, well, actually, let's not look back at the past, let's look forward, and let's use maybe more of the tools from CBT, for example.
And I like that, because you're basically saying you might have a strategy or a route that your clients follow at the moment, like they come to you, do a consultation, blah, blah, and like your normal forms and things that you might use. Now, you've kind of got, in my opinion, two options. I'm sure it'll be more than that. You can either change your route that you're going to do, so maybe insert new parts of your journey, like maybe a second consultation or a head session.
Which is behaviour change in its, sorry to jump in, which is behaviour change in its own right. Because notice the moment, and keep your thought, okay?
It's going to disappear.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I just want to say, or you can change how you do something in a structure that you already have. Then you're going to say
I notice that in changing the way you do things, that is behaviour change in its own right. And at first, it's going to feel different. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel outside your comfort zone. And so there's going to be some potential resistance to change. And so we have our set routine of, okay, this is how I communicate with a client. This is how I onboard a new client. And this is how I get going with a client. This is where I place my PAR-Q. Now, through season 8, it might be that we've challenged you to consider a new onboarding of a client, and in doing so, that first couple of times you try that are going to feel different. It's going to feel odd. It's going to feel uncomfortable, maybe. But it's knowing that this is you taking action, just like your clients are taking action. And if a client goes, well, I want to, I don't know, go from couch to 5K. Well, their comfort zone is on the couch. The resistance to change is going to be in the actual action of getting there and doing it.
Nice.
And it's the same with this season. It's all very well saying it's interesting, but is it useful? I want to argue yes. It's inarguable that this is useful.
Yeah.
It's inarguable that it's
in
useful.
anything.
In anything. It's
in
interesting
life,
to listen to.
clients.
Maybe it's motivating. We're motivating you, and you're getting some what's the word I'm looking for?
Needs met? Is that what you mean?
Not needs met, not like where you're sedating almost, over listening.
Yeah.
But actually, I want you
entertainment,
completely. I want you to take this and take action.
Yeah, and turn it into something.
And turn it into something that's unique for you.
I like it.
So let's jump into episode number 1,
Yes.
start of the beginning. What would you say is your big takeaway, Hayley, for episode number 1, which was the context of behaviour change?
I really liked how we were talking about the difference between the lighthouse coach and the tugboat coach.
Tell me more.
So we were saying about be the lighthouse coach, which means that you're literally going to shine your light over everything that's available in that harbour, which means that your client can orientate their route to get their goal now, or their route through the conversation. That's very different to a tugboat type of coach that would literally attach to the ship, and pull them into port so they know exactly where they were going. And the thing I liked about this is that if somebody relies on a tugboat coach, then the next time they come into harbour, they're not going to know the route without having a tugboat again. Whereas if you just shine a light onto all the rocks, all the different obstacles, they can navigate that themselves and do it again on their own again.
That's spot on. I love that. And also to build on that, the tugboat would also be this didactic approach.
Yeah.
Whereby you are trying to persuade the client, you're telling the client rather than guiding the client and allowing them to be at the centre and saying, like, where would you like to go? Well, I'd like to sail over here. Well, just be mindful there are rocks over here. Let me help you, show you, guide you with your conversation, with my questions, where the rocks are, so you can navigate through the roughest path or the roughest seas.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is the spirit of self-efficacy, the spirit of communication, the spirit of SMART goals, the spirit of CBT, NLP, and motivational interviewing.
They're all there together, which is why it's a lovely summary. What's your big takeaway?
I like this concept of a yellow brick road.
We came back to it on, I think, every single episode.
Yeah, completely. For me, it's been a mainstayer for me working with clients for so many years now, in this concept that we know the client wants to get from A to B. Where they are right now is stuck. Okay, where they want to get to would be the transformation.
Yeah.
Okay, so for example, you might be listening to this and you might say, right, I'm stuck with my revision and my transformation is I pass my exam.
Yes,
Therefore, you
so
can
like
take
an end outcome.
An end outcome. Now, there's lots of routes you could go, but through my open questions or through my communication, through my language, I allow you to navigate an answer that only offers a yellow brick. Now, the yellow brick has this flexibility to say it's not necessarily just one straight line. I could zigzag across the path. I could have this path meandering towards the transformation of passing or towards the transformation of confidence or more knowledge.
Yeah.
But the questions are centered around the answers you give. And therefore, through the toolbox of me being a FITPRO, of understanding sets, reps, tempo, time, of frequency, intensity, time and type, overload, progression, reversibility, plateau, individuality, all of that, all the principles of how do I get my client the transformation, I know that I can offer a yellow brick that allows an answer to move forwards.
Yeah, the thing I like about that is that they build the road.
They build the road, perfect.
But you offer the right bricks based on the information they're giving you.
Completely.
Yeah, really smart.
So that was my takeaway. I also liked the and what your notes on here about the syntax of a padlock.
That there is this clear padlock that your client has. So if you imagine on a padlock, you've got to get the code exactly right, haven't you?
Yes.
You can't get it wrong, else you can't open up the padlock. So the idea of a padlock to me represents the idea that your client's got this padlock, and in order to allow them to create a change, we've got to get the code right. We've got to build rapport. We've got to find out how they communicate and how they talk.
Completely. And building on that, it would be through my open questions or through the spirit of MI or CBT. It's the exploration into finding those numbers on the padlock. So the client might sit down and have a padlock of 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
And I might be talking in 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
And then through open questions, okay, and through exploring where they are right now and going beyond the surface level answers, we find out that we can dish up better questions to find the syntax of a padlock of 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, and part of that syntax,
I don't know that before I start with a client.
Yeah, and part of that syntax is talking to them and being like, oh, I can see you're really visual in how you're talking, or I can see how your body language moves, and that becomes that part of building that rapport and unlocking.
Well, I'm a very visual learner, which I've said is quite ironic because I wear glasses and I'm partially blind. But as a visual learner, I would therefore, my language or my communication would lend itself to be more visual. So I'd say, like, I can see what you mean.
Yeah.
So in the early stages of, say, consultation 1 or 2, I would have a sensory acuity to figure out, well, what's my client saying? They might go, I hear you on that, or that feels great. Now, they might have a preferred way of learning through visual, auditory and kinesthetic. And so the client could have a syntax padlock towards their new behaviour as 1, 2, 3, 4. And I could also be talking in 1, 2, 3, 4. But they could be auditory and I could be visual, in which case the padlock still doesn't open.
Yeah, nice.
You know when you get a padlock and you're like, well, I've got the digits all lined up, but it still kind of opens up, but still doesn't fully open. And it's just a tiny little bit out on that cog, whatever it is. That could just be visual, auditory and kinesthetic.
Yeah.
And a simple change in our language early on.
Which I think stacks up for the rest of the episodes really nicely. And I think the next episode we went into, in episode 2, was transtheoretical model of change, which we definitely touched on every single episode afterwards. And it was so needed as this foundational understanding of the change that happens. What is behavioural change? How does it occur?
And I think it's the watermark behind all change, isn't it? Because it's understanding someone's readiness to change. It's not necessarily saying this is how you get somebody to change. There's some key questions in there that you could ask, I suppose, which is one of the constructs of the TTM model. I don't know why we call it the TTM model.
Transtheoretical.
Because it would be, so basically I'm saying the transtheoretical model. The the TT model.
Yeah.
Anyway, you could ask the construct of decisional balance. So I could still assist in moving them through this readiness of change by asking, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, a Likert scale, how committed are you? How important it is? And therefore assisting them in moving forwards. But now I'm jumping into maybe some other models that build up the transtheoretical model. Does that make sense?
Build them as they move through their readiness to change. The thing I found really interesting about transtheoretical model was that I hadn't necessarily noticed before was that the first 2 sections
you stole my thing. That's what I was going to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was pre-contemplation and contemplation, which was really cognitive.
Behavioural,
and then they move into the action approach, and the behaviours are going to change over preparation, action, and into maintenance. So there's that understanding of, like, there's that moment whereby in preparation and pre-contemplation and contemplation, they're not actually done anything yet. There's no behaviour has actually changed. They're not ready. They're not fully ready yet.
I think leading on that then, to because that was what I was going to say, okay, would be that if you look at, say, like the statistics
Sounded weird,
I know, didn't it, of those people that are in an action stage or a maintenance phase, in comparison to those that are not in the UK, it's relatively a small amount of number that participate on regular structured physical activity.
Yeah.
So from, the stats out of Nuffield Health, UK Active, World Health Organization, that type of thing. And if you think about how many people are active versus those that aren't active in a structured way, it's a vast, many more number of people that are inactive, sedentary, that actually need your help. Yeah. And therefore, it starts off with a behavioural, cognitive approach of communicating your message, okay, not in a didactic way, not in a it's an influencing way, not a persuasive way.
And an educational
way, a fun way that allows somebody to go through a pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation state in order to become more active. So if you're a FITPRO and you're currently sitting there thinking, I'd like to be a bit busier, I'd like a few more clients, why can't I seem to pick more clients up? Consider, are you communicating your message inside the frame of pre-contemplation, contemplation and preparation?
So that even those that aren't ready to change
can
move forward.
Yeah, well, that,
is that what you mean?
Yeah, if you want to help more people, gain more clients, and equally, like, it goes hand in hand, make more money and build a FITPRO business, then surely focusing on let's just give an arbitrary number, 70-80% of people that are not yet ready is a much easier kind of pool of people to go after than, say, the 10, 15, 20% that are already active.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. That's smart.
And that's where in that second episode, that's where we did link to, say, marketing. We did link to you as a FITPRO business.
And we had some really clear examples in there as well. I remember about, like, what to say in order to, like, on questions to help people move along the transtheoretical model as well.
Wicked. I think, well, that was actually one of our highest downloaded sessions at season 8, to be honest. I think it also works very well with your case studies for your level 3, whether it be yoga, Pilates, PT, that type of thing. Even at level 2, we talk about the TTM model.
Yeah.
And so as you develop, I think it becomes a mainstay of, say, the new long-term clinical conditions course. There's a big behaviour change section that we've put in.
Yeah.
And then obviously, level 4 obesity, level 4 low back pain, level 4 mental health, all of the level 4s, level 4 advanced PT, behaviour change. Like, it's great that we understand planning at a deeper level. It's great that we understand the clinical condition at a deeper level. But how do we pass that information on to our clients to actually get a result, a formidable result and a transformation?
Yeah.
That's behaviour change.
That is. I like it.
Session three was all about self-efficacy.
And Bandura's self-efficacy theory.
Yes.
Yeah.
And here we had these 4 components of self-efficacy, and I think this would be the takeaway point. So do you want to, if you talk about the first 2, can you read my writing? So the first one is own experience and then observed experience.
Oh, that's an O. So own experience.
Amazing.
And which is your own physical experience or your own experience that you've achieved for something. So what I really liked about self-efficacy theory is that when you're talking about building somebody up, and that you can do the same in reverse by lowering someone's self-efficacy. So self-efficacy could either go up or down as a result of the experiences that you are part of. So, for example, the first part of self-efficacy model was your own experience. So if I have a good experience, it will help contribute to building my self-efficacy that I could go and do that again. So, for example, I go for a drive in the car without crashing it. Now I believe that I'm able to do that one more time, or I'm able to do that again because I've done it once already. Whereas if I have a negative experience, let's take the same example, I go out and I clip the wheel on the curb or whatever it might be.
Don't do that to my alloys.
Exactly. Then I have a negative experience that now believes that I cannot do that one thing, and it starts to reduce my self-efficacy.
Like same with like planning, wouldn't it? Planning as a FITPRO would be
probably more appropriate than driving.
If you sat down and you started planning and it took ages to plan and you didn't feel confident or you didn't understand what exercises or the variables to put in your mobility or activation or your raised pulse, for example, how that links to the goal of a main session, then depending on your thoughts, feelings and emotions of that will determine whether or not that is framed as a good experience, own experience, or what did I say, good or bad?
Good. You said good.
Or a bad own experience, and therefore would lower your self-efficacy.
Yeah, exactly. And the second one is observed experiences. So you don't even need to have done it yourself in order to see that it is possible.
Yeah.
And I like that idea of being able to say, well, if there is an observation of somebody else, let's take the planning example, that you have observed somebody else can plan that quickly and easily, it allows you to see it's possible, build your self-efficacy that you could do it too.
This was evident in the classroom at the weekend. So in our Milton Keynes Academy, I went through the structure of a plan with our new level 2 fitness instructor group. And at the beginning, we talked about, what they've been doing for planning and their understanding of planning. I also asked them on a scale of 1 to 10 how confident they would be to put a plan together. And, when we looked around the room, it was evident that overall the confidence, if 0 was not very confident and 10 was very confident, they were all below 5. Now within the next, I'm going to say 5 to 8 minutes, Hayley and I outlined planning using a couple of acronyms of Mars, Pluto. Mars for warm-up, Pluto for cool-down, and then the main chunk around how to balance a program and look at a whole-body approach. And literally in 5 minutes, everybody kind of had this observed experience where they went, do you know what? You've made what I thought was incredibly complex, incredibly simple. Thank you. And they all went away and we asked them to plan a brief outline for a whole session in literally under 2 to 3 minutes. And in their pairs, they came back, every group, with a very clear plan, because the self-efficacy had gone up from an observed experience of how easy it could be.
Yes.
Which then leads on to number 3, which is verbal persuasion. So that could be from ourselves in terms of an internal locus of control, or an external person, an external locus of control, of verbally persuasion.
This reminds me of when you're of somebody thinking of becoming a FITPRO and they're maybe training with their friends or whatever, and their friends go, you'd be so good at this as a coach. You'd be so good as a FITPRO. Even if you don't believe it yourself at that point, they can actually build your ability to believe in yourself because they've believed it and told you it.
And we did a Facebook Live about this recently, and also I've just written an email about it, of you learn what you hear yourself say, but you also learn what you hear other people say.
Nice.
So if Hayley is constantly saying to me, great work, Neil, very well done, you did really well today, this was great, then I'm going to learn to hear what Hayley says, and I'm going to believe that to be true. And that builds up into this self-efficacy. Likewise, if Hayley's constantly saying, you did this wrong, or you could do this better, or why can't you...
You're not very good at this.
Whatever. Yeah, which is the... hopefully an external person wouldn't do that, but from an internal verbal persuasion, not just FITPROs, I think everybody on this planet is very good at beating ourselves up.
Definitely.
So we want to be mindful about listening out for what we're saying to ourselves, either in our head or verbally out loud, which is even more powerful, but also what other people are telling us and talking about to us as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
And then the final one is an emotional response.
Yes, so that you, let's say for example, you do something and as a result you kind of get that emotional kick, which kind of goes, yes, actually, like I feel really good from that, and therefore that builds your self-efficacy that you could do it again. Let's take the first time you teach someone how to do a press-up, for example, and you're like, cool, we had this on the level 2 group on the weekend. They literally start off, they don't know necessarily how to do it, a little bit nervous, which could, if they stayed in that position, could make them feel lower in their self-efficacy. But instead they had structure, they followed it, they'd done one whole thing, and as a result of that personal experience and the emotion they got in doing so, they're like, I can imagine myself doing this. I've actually done it. I feel really good. You kind of get that rush of...
The moment you link an emotion to an action that went well, you have what I call a significant emotional event.
Yeah.
Okay. So the event was, I was teaching Hayley how to do a press up and I was coaching for the first time and it all went to plan. And it's emotional because the client for the first time did it and they enjoyed it. And it's the first time I experienced it and I coached it well and I enjoyed it. Now it's a significant emotional event. So the question is, moving forwards as a tangible action for you, what significant emotional events can you do to improve your self-efficacy in the coming days or weeks as a FITPRO?
And for your clients.
More so, yes, completely.
Something we done in this episode that I really enjoyed was that we spoke about how you can focus building your client's self-efficacy, not necessarily through a sit-down session, but you can do it within the workout, you can do it within the nutrition advice, within the accountability, so that they have little parts that help build their self-efficacy over time, so they believe they can do it and they're heading towards
that. Could be how you communicate, which was the next episode, but that could be how you communicate via email throughout the week, via text, via voice messenger. How are we supporting our clients to communicate our message? Because we as a FITPRO, we're fully converted to fitness, health and nutrition, right?
Yeah.
Like we are diehard, like, yes, we're all in on this.
Yeah.
So we've got to slowly catch a monkey, drip feed our message to our client. And it's not just communicating it with self-efficacy the once or twice a week we see them, but how many times a week can I add this dose or, a dose response, which is another principle of training, isn't it?
The more dose you have, the more result you'll get.
The more exposure to it, the more result you're going to have.
And even down to like the verbal persuasion side of that, of like every time you see someone, if they're doing something well, say, you're really good at keeping your back straight on that squat.
Well, I think we live in a culture.
It reinforces, doesn't it?
I think we also live in a culture, not just in the UK, but we're a negative group of people, not parallel, but we're, as a human race, we're quite negative, aren't we? The news is doom and gloom. Social media feels doom and gloom. Like it just feels negative for the majority of the time. If you were to be influenced by our surroundings, does that make sense?
Yes.
And this is where we've got to kind of go against the grain as FITPROs, and we could be the only beacon of light, the only lighthouse in someone's day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They could have loads of plates spinning, loads of stresses, loads of anxieties, life throwing them lemons all the time. And for a glimmer every day, just this light, this flashing light that comes round on the lighthouse and just says, oh, that's them. They reminded me of this. I know what I'm doing, and it gives me purpose.
That's smart. I like that.
Which leads on to communication. And in order to do this, like my big takeaway straight in was just this concept of rapport. And understanding what rapport means for you. So maybe an action point coming out of today's episode is to go back and review episode number 4 and sit down and think, right, how am I building rapport? What actions do I do every session to build rapport? Am I taking rapport for granted? Does my client know, like, and trust me? Now, you might have built rapport on the first 1 or 2 sessions, but how are you building rapport on the 10th session, the 20th session, the 30th session, in order to develop your communication, develop your language skills with your client to truly get a formidable result?
Nice. What I really liked about the communication skills episode is that rather than, like, some of these are like what you do changes. Like I said earlier, like you might do your consultation where you didn't before, or you might implement a whole new set of questions. Communication for me is about how you go and do all the other parts of the season.
Yes.
How you go and do your CBT, how you implement NLP, how you'd implement MI, how you do your SMART goals.
Perfect.
It's all about, like you said, the rapport first, the consultation setup. We've also spoke about the difference between influence and persuasion.
You're trying to read my writing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Influence and persuasion. We spoke about oars and how you can structure a conversation. And I just think that like it really was how you do something, not what you do.
And one of the things we developed on that, on like the how, was this understanding of reflective listening. So you could have verbal reflective listening, where you're actually, coaxing more information out of the clients by saying something like, tell me more, that's right. And then you can have non-verbal reflective listening, where you're clearly getting eye contact, you appear relaxed, your posture actually points towards the client, you're giving them time and space.
You got nodding and
Completely.
smiling and
completely. You're actively showing that you're listening, and every time you're listening, you're also silent. And then we talked about paraphrasing and summaries. So to gain clarity of like, did the client just say that? Did I interpret it right? Was my perspective of what they were saying, is that correct on the client's viewpoint? Because a client has a map of a world and I have a map of a world, and they're going to be very different. And we talked about in another episode that if we both look at the wallpaper opposite, I can't remember what you said now. What do you see?
I said liney and you said stripy.
And I said stripy. So same but different.
Or I go, it's brown, and you go, okay, no, I see it's stripy.
I know, yeah, so same but different. We're both looking at the same thing, but that's what paraphrasing would be. It's like, okay, so you interpreted that as brown. Now I can see what you're seeing. Now I can hear what you're hearing. Now I can feel what you're feeling. And it allows me to align and build even greater rapport. Nice. So I think this is maybe, I've been guilty of it, I think, as a FITPRO before, and maybe you have too, where you start off with, huge levels of intention and action in the first few sessions because it's brand new with a client.
Yeah.
And as you build up your rapport and your relationship, you become complacent, I think.
I think that's the
and
phrase.
It's noticing that, am I complacent in my rapport? Am I picking up on those sensory acuity things of like, I said liney, you said stripy. Okay, so now can I paraphrase and can I summarize that back and make a note of it? So in future, I use the word stripy.
As your phrase.
As my phrase. Does that make sense? So you're not going to copy them like parrot fashion.
But it's paraphrasing.
But it's paraphrasing. But what I am going to do is be highly attuned to figure out what are they saying and how they're saying and what's their map of a world, so I can communicate and build rapport and align with them.
I like that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, very smart, very smart. And the next one really drives from communication skills to then...
I liked this next session.
Yeah, it was all about what motivates a client to change. And following the open questions we had in communication skills, this now drives into taking those open questions and exploring what it is that motivates them. What is it that they really want? What is their goal? What does it mean?
Because we might ask a question. It could be just the basic question of why you're here, what's your reason for coming to here today, what's your goal? And they're going to give potentially a very surface level answer, which could be, well, I want to lose some weight.
Yes.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It has meaning, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't necessarily have any deep-rooted meanings or motives to take action.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I said, cool, well, let's start losing weight, like, oh, well, nothing's actually changed, or there's been no cognition to move further down this yellow brick road.
And we said about linking things. So they might link that weight loss with, let's say, a better relationship with their partner.
Well, they would do, wouldn't they? That's what we've got to find out.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
It's that linking. And that linking shows, well, if I'm after a better relationship with a partner, but I've claimed that it's a result of weight loss, then I could lose weight and not get a better relationship with my partner.
Yes.
Or I could lose weight and get the better relationship with my partner. But it's knowing what is the real motivator, and we chunk that into health, wealth and relationships. So my one then was relationships. But I could say that this person wants to lose weight, and as they're talking, it's so that they can go for a new job interview and feel confident, which might be wealth related.
So it's understanding. I suppose this would be like a complex equivalent. Losing weight doesn't actually mean you're going to get the job interview, but it's that association to what's the leverage behind them taking action in the first place, and is there enough leverage to move forwards and say, well, I've got a motive to take action when times are hard. I've got a motive to take action when it's raining outside. I've got a motive to take action, because that's what motivating is.
Yeah.
Is there enough leverage behind all the reasons for taking action in the moment in order to get to the goal over all the reasons not to take action in the moment towards the goal?
Yeah.
I
And we
really
spoke
like that.
about towards pleasure and away from pain. We spoke about meta and Milton language as well. So much in that one in terms of really understanding new phrases. I think this was one of the ones we had the most feedback from.
Yes.
That started to be like, wow.
It's also one of the things we've placed into the new long-term conditions course around understanding, a client comes to you with a long-term condition. Maybe they are they've been guided by a physician, a GP.
Yeah.
Maybe they've just become aware of it themselves. Maybe a significant other person, a friend or family member, has had a long-term condition and they don't want to get it themselves.
So
Potentially.
health related.
And so understanding what are the motives behind taking action and how we move forwards in our language and communicate that message to say, right, are you going towards something or away from something? And again, I'm a very towards person, but I'm going to say the majority of my clients are away from clients at the moment.
So you've got talking away from language.
I've got to understand and therefore practice. Maybe one of your action points today is to think, right, are my clients away from their pain or towards their pleasure? In which case, well, what am I? And then thinking of a possible kind of role play, I suppose, of if I asked a client this question, what would they likely respond with? And if they respond with that, what would be my next question? So role playing is another action point for you to practice.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it does work really nicely.
Because that's what CBT is, which is another episode we're going to talk about in a minute, is thinking about a situation. And therefore the situation would be, well, that gives me a thought. Well, if a situation was I asked my client this question, what am I going to think? And therefore, what's my emotional response? Well, I now need to think in and away from language, and therefore my behaviour and action is away from to keep this rapport going.
Yeah.
Cool.
Ooh, nice.
I like that. The
Smart
next one was, I think, it was the least favourite of the episode based on an arbitrary number of how many people downloaded.
Maybe it didn't sound very sexy when you talk about smart goals.
No, completely. Yet it was one of the episodes, along with number 5,
that had the most feedback for those that did download it. So if you're one of those that didn't download it because you're like, oh God, I know about smart
goal setting,
go and have a listen, because honestly, we divided it, instead of it being the normal SMART of specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time framed, we also then gave you two more SMART acronyms to expand what SMART really means, so that you've got one goal with lots of meaning and depth to
completely, which gives you one focus or one yellow brick road to focus on, which builds up the previous 5 episodes.
And one of my key things on this is that right in the middle of all of these, what would it be, 15 words, right in the middle, you had actionable. And that was like key for me, because it was like, you could have all the best goal in the world, but if your client can't leave that session and go and action it like now, they ain't doing it.
And that's what I've loved about all of these episodes. In fact, all of FITPRO Session, at some point, there's been 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 or more actions. I've given you action points you could already go away and do today and get a mini win. So the question is for you, for your client, I'm doing it right now, is what's the mini win you could go and get your client to do right now, which could build up their self-efficacy, move them into a very strong transtheoretical model of action. You could communicate and build rapport through communicating outside of your session. Therefore, you could figure out what's truly motivating them and guide them towards the yellow brick road, all through SMART goals of being actionable.
Yeah, and you've got all those motivators to lead to down that yellow brick road to one clear goal at the end.
So we had specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time. The second group of SMART was
You've got to read this.
System, monitor, actionable, relevant and trackable.
Oh, yes.
Now, I'll go for the third one. So the third one, it's got to be simple, manageable, attainable, reachable and teachable. Okay,
reachable and teachable.
So the 3 or 4 things that really pinpoint for me is that it's never just a case of I'm going to use this SMART or this SMART. You've now got 3 S's, 3 M's, 3 A's, 3 R's and 3 T's, and they could be interchangeable. Now, I really
Sorry, I giggled then. You know why?
No.
You said 3 T's. That was my favourite band when I was
oh my God.
when I was
Let's
like
not go
young.
There. 3-2. Wasn't he like Michael Jackson's cousin or
They were, yeah, all three of them were.
I can't even believe you said that on a podcast. I'm going to keep it in.
I think I even remember their names.
We don't want to know that. What I really liked about the SMART for me that sticks out is system. Okay?
Yeah.
It's all very well having something working towards a specific goal, you know, down the Yellow Brick Road towards Rome, the Colosseum. It's great. You've got that. Okay? It's all very well keeping it simple. But if you don't have a system, okay, you can't get from A to B. Notice anything in our world has a system. If I want to hang wallpaper, there's a system to hanging wallpaper. If I want to put a nail in the wall, there's a system for putting the nail in the wall. If I want to drive to our Milton Keynes Academy, there's a system for that. If you want to enroll on a course, there's a system for that. If you want to pass your revision and pass your exam, there's a system for that. So the moment you add a system, there is a series of logical steps that are the prerequisite to get to the next part of this system. You will get to your Yellow Brick Road and you'll get to your Colosseum end goal. Which means the more simple this system is towards a specific goal, now you've got something very, very powerful. Now the other thing is I would pick out here, which is the last T, which is teachable. I've just taught you this, and if I can't teach it to you fluently, elegantly, with a story, okay, as if I'm drawing it with Crayola crayons, okay,
which is why you mentioned the wallpaper or the they're your story.
Yeah, then the likelihood is that you won't understand the system. So I've got to be able to teach it in layman's language. I've got to be able to teach somebody as if they've never been exposed to this before, but through the stories or the analogies or the metaphors, they understand this system to say, do you know what, this sounds right for me.
And this is what we related to on that same podcast. We were talking about how a package is put together or a process is put together so that you can actually guarantee a result with your client would be that they're following a system to a very specific outcome that is simplified and that you can teach to them with ease so that you can actually guarantee that result because you have the system in place.
Completely.
It wouldn't work if you had, right, this is my system for running a marathon, but you gave somebody that goal for weight gain, for example.
Or you had
wouldn't work.
You worked with loads of marathon runners, but you had lots of different systems to get there. So what is your signature program? And that's something we talk about in the fitness business Kickstarter, isn't it? It's like, if I had a silver platter and I said, right, I only work with this group of people. I only work with clients that are BMI 35 plus, that have high blood pressure, that have a negative hip to waist ratio, and this is how we improve someone's health, and these are my markers, and this is my system, X, Y, and Z, bam. Now you're going to attract people only of that ideal client, but also because you can pull off that result because you have a very specific, teachable, clear, specific, simple system.
Yay! Nice.
Immediately, I just loved that episode.
It was wicked.
Yeah, I loved it.
Now, I like the last three because the previous ones have been principles you could apply to anything. They're kind of like how you do it. But these are specific techniques and principles that are in place that will allow you to follow an already existing system. So rather than now creating this into a system you already have, you can follow something that already exists via years and years of research.
So the first one was
CBT.
So cognitive behavioural therapy. Cognitive being that it's a behaviour that's in the brain. It's for 6 inches between your left ear and right ear. And it starts off with, we had this model where it starts off with a situation, and depending on that situation gives you a very particular thought, and based on that thought you're going to elicit a particular emotion, and based on that emotion you're going to have a behaviour, and based on that behaviour you're going to have a very particular response.
Or a physical reaction.
And therefore you've got this, I suppose, self-fulfilling prophecy that the moment you hit a situation, it sends you on a cycle, which in turn keeps the cycle going.
And what I found really interesting about CBT is that it's all about that if we want to change someone's behaviours, it must start with how we're processing our thoughts. So if a situation occurs, and we had the example of Bob and Jim, was it?
Yes, Bob and Jim
in the gym. And they were basically having a conversation, and one person said something
about
that criticised the lat pull down with the other person, how they were teaching it. And as a result, that became a sequence of either helpful or unhelpful thought process led them down 2 different routes. The helpful thought process changed the emotions, the behaviours and the physical reactions in a positive way of like, oh, I hope that person's okay, or what's different about what they're saying. Whereas the other version was that negative and unhelpful thought that led to this like self-perpetuating behavior, emotion and physical reaction that might lead to that person never using the lat pull down ever again.
But it also cascades further than that, doesn't it? So if somebody has a positive situation where they get good praise, for example, on my lat pull down, okay, for their coaching, then that leads to an emotion of feeling good, which leads to a behaviour of I'm going to do that again, which is a physical reaction of excitement, of enjoyment. But also it now leads to another situation whereby that person might now eat healthier that day, or have a better option, or play full out at work, or stay later. Or in the gym, they might go up and ask another member of like how their day's going, or go above and beyond and, I don't know, empty the bins, for example. Do something else on a positive aspect, because it's a self-perpetuating cycle up. And likewise, it would be the negative. They get negative feedback based on their coaching from another trainer. Their thought is, well, I'm not very good at this. It might confirm their confirmation bias for themselves. So like, I thought I wasn't very good at this as well. Yeah. The emotion was, I feel sad, I feel upset. The behaviour is now I feel like I don't get this, and the physical reaction would be, well, I'm never going to do it again. I'm not going to use my lat pull down. But now the cascade effect would be that they appear tired, lethargic, apathetic. They appear,
and that's those physical reactions.
Physical reactions of their shoulders slump. They don't go up and ask somebody because their confidence has been knocked, their self-efficacy has been knocked, and therefore it's through verbal persuasion from somebody else, which was the third point. Emotional response, which would be the fourth point, an observed experience whereby they could look at the other trainer doing it in a different way,
and their own experience.
So now self-efficacy theory just plummets to like 0, 1 out of 10, and they're in this self-fulfilling prophecy of the CBT cycle.
And it's what I really like about that. That's very well. I like that. And what I really like about this model is that it really clearly says if you want to change someone's behaviours, it's got to start with their thought processes. Yes. And I think main thing with CBT is it's used so widely across healthcare and therapies that you can always refer someone onto CBT if it basically gets to a point whereby you're like, I can't help them anymore. All the open questions in the world, their thought process are changing their behaviours in a negative way, and actually they need to go and sort out those unhelpful behaviours, unhelpful and inaccurate thought processes, so that they can actually go and find an opportunity to have more helpful behaviours and more helpful thoughts, regardless of the situation that happens.
We need to understand our scope of practice, is what I think is what you're saying, isn't it? It's saying, right, I'm a FITPRO at the end of the day. I'm a FITPRO. I deal with sets, reps, tempo, time. I'm out in the park. I'm doing, we're all involved in the exercise, the first two prongs of what we do, which is exercise, nutrition. Okay, and nutrition rather. So the third prong is behaviour change. But there comes a point where we go, do you know what? This is too far out of my scope of practice. And I think that's what I love about, say, like the new long-term clinical conditions, because it does have these various models in there, plus many more models. I think overall, there's something like 12 models and approaches that are in that course, which actually allows you to have not just the knowledge and the confidence, but to say, I can deal with someone under a much broader scope of practice, what I'm qualified to do and insured to do, before I need to go on and refer out.
Yeah. This one also reminded me that after this podcast that we did, one of our learners reached out to us, and she had a client that actually had a history of eating disorders, and she was working with or was wanting to work with this client. This client wanted to work with her, and she noticed this distinction between what the client was saying about the goal that she wanted to achieve of, say, muscle building, etc., but how she had these unhelpful and inaccurate thoughts about not touching any nutrition.
So discrepancy.
Yeah, there was this discrepancy between the two, and as a result she referred her on to a CBT specialist so she could get the help she needed. Perfect. And it actually, the client was so grateful that somebody had actually taken the time to notice this, where the client couldn't notice this unhelpful thoughts, and actually was able to refer her on to get the help, and she was so grateful for being able to refer her on.
But initially, for the learner, the FITPRO, and I imagine you're listening, the situation was, if I refer out, will that impact her negatively? So there was this cognitive behavioural approach of situation, thought, emotion, behaviour, physical reaction inside the FITPRO, worrying about the reaction, okay?
And actually, it was all positive.
And in actual fact, it was all positive.
I like that one.
I liked the next one. I think I think we played full out on all of these podcasts, but I think you played really full out on the NLP one.
We had 14 presuppositions to go through.
There was such a theorized approach, wasn't it, of these 14 presuppositions of understanding the map of the world. And I think you were the backbone to that session, so I'm going to tip my hat to that one.
Which I think, and I always would say NLP is your thing.
It is. I just think, as I've listened back to it, I just feel that you brought the structure to it, and that structure allowed that very woolly exploration into NLP.
And that structure was a Parthenon.
Yes.
And that Parthenon basically said that you need to start with a foundation of curiosity.
Yes.
And that's the foundation of this Parthenon setup. So if you start anything from an NLP point of view, you always approach it with lots of curiosity.
Isn't curiosity building rapport?
Yes.
Okay,
Just continual asking of questions.
Which would be like cliche questions, which would be bridge questions, which would be surface level questions, which would be deeper questions. So curiosity is in fact rapport, which then leads on to these 4 pillars, which the first one is rapport.
Yes.
Which notice that rapport is not unique to NLP, it's not unique to CBT, it's not unique to self-efficacy, it's not unique to motivational interviewing.
It's a principle on everything.
It's a principle across everything.
Yeah.
So again, I just want to reaffirm that. It's like, where in your world right now with your clients are you still building rapport? Are you taking rapport for granted based on how long you've been working with them?
Yeah.
The next pillar was sensory acuity.
Or sensory awareness, either of those. And that basically means that you're being aware via all of your communication skills to have your senses and notice what your client is saying. So kind of what we were saying with that other FITPRO a moment ago, she noticed a discrepancy between what was being said and what the client really wanted. She also noticed the difference on maybe verbal communication and compared to visual, or how the client is moving. And that sensory acuity gives you deeper clues as to things that maybe need to be a focus later on.
And that's the next one, which is like, so the client could be saying one thing but wanting to do another, or not doing anything at all. Okay, and therefore the third pillar is all about the outcome. We want to go on this yellow brick road. We're at A, we want to get to B. Now we could zigzag across the path, we could meander the path. We don't necessarily need to take the shortest route. It'd be great if we could, which would be your overnight transformation, but we know that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So the question is like, how do we keep the client in this outcome thinking? How do we keep the client... Here's the action point, ready? How do you constantly remind the client of their goal?
Yeah, there you go.
Every session, every time you introduce a new exercise, tell them why. Give them the meaning behind why we're doing what we're doing. Because the moment we understand why we're doing it, and we can go back to session number 5, the global awareness of motivators of like, are we towards or away from, is it a health, wealth or relationship goal, and remind them of this deep innate feeling, that flame inside the client that says, I'm doing this because, and I'm doing this exercise or this training system, I'm doing these number of reps, so I've got to do this self-guided session because. And the moment you remind them, you're hitting pillar number 5 of these 14, pillar number 3 of these 14 presuppositions of what we know to be true in NLP.
Yeah, exactly. And then number 4 is behavioural flexibility. So what I liked about being goal focused a moment ago was that if you're really goal focused, then any of the like little rules or little unhelpful thoughts that we might have are irrelevant because you focus on the goal and not all the different obstacles you'll go through. So if you imagine that like yellow brick road going through, I then imagine, like, not to cross over things, but you know Snow White when she goes through the forest and there's like all of these branches in her way and it's dark and she falls in a puddle and everything else, but you've got that path through it, and it means that you're not thinking about or focusing on all the obstacles, but you're focusing on the goal. And that behavioural flexibility, to me, is that Snow White going through and over and under in different ways to get to
keeping it with the yellow brick road outcome, okay, which I like that about the Snow White, it's Snow White's path. So I've said the yellow brick road and you went down the Snow White route, which is absolutely spot on, because what we're saying
rather than Dorothy. Probably should have gone with Dorothy.
Well, it doesn't matter which road, providing the behavioural flexibility remains with the client.
Yeah.
Okay, so the client's got their own thoughts, feelings, emotions, barriers, hurdles, things like life, all the lemons of life being thrown at them. Behavioural flexibility is appreciating and respecting that it's their road. It's their forest to get through. It's not my burden to bear. It's their responsibility to pick up the yellow brick and put the yellow brick down.
If they choose to do that behaviour, then we don't judge them for that.
Completely. And behavioural flexibility is not, I'm not saying drop your own values and beliefs of what we know to be true, but not confusing our map of a world or what we would do in their shoes, okay, for what they want to do in their shoes.
Which means it's not really prescriptive. So let's say, for example, you go, well, the best food you need to consume is avocados. Like, you have to have these if you want to achieve
But if a
X.
client doesn't like avocados,
then you need to be flexible.
Then I need to be flexible.
That you can get the goal without them.
Completely. Like, I eat meat, but I've got many clients that have gone on to do running goals, 10k, half marathons and whatnot, and lose a shed ton of weight on different goals, okay, that are vegetarian, vegan, pescatarian. Now, by behavioural flexibility is appreciating their map of the world and not imposing that's persuasion. I want to be influencing of the principles. I don't want to be persuading them and saying, no, in order to get your goal, you've got to eat meat. Because that's actually not true. And what NLP is looking at is, what do we know to be true for this person? Cool. Which leads us on to the final one. I enjoyed them all, but I loved motivational interviewing, because I see motivational interviewing as not just maybe a construct of a transtheoretical model. It's not a construct of it, but it's like husband and wife in my eyes. They're almost like backbone watermarks behind all the other theories and approaches. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was really all about, like, we set up a rule. Like, we showed you the 4 principles behind motivational.
We had R, U, L, and then number E, if you remember.
E. And this one was all about, so it showed the principles behind MI. So R was to resist the urge to change the client.
Which is what we were just saying a minute ago, which is behavioural flexibility.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yes. And U was to understand...
Or seek to understand the client. You can't read my writing.
I can't, can you?
So do you want me to do it?
Yeah, please.
So U was to seek to understand the client, which again comes back to our open questions, affirmation, reflective listening, summaries, and we gave the analogy of stepping in a rowing boat with the oars. So seeking to understand the client and truly get to build rapport and go, right, what do I know to be true of your map of a world? How do you see... So I'm looking at you face on the couch here. Now I want to walk around the side of the couch and see your map of a world from the side. Like, is this what you meant? And gain that
empathy and understanding,
which was the next thing, which was
L is all about listening, so that you're
building empathy.
Yeah, exactly. And then E was all about empowering them to know that they have the change inside them, so they have the power to change themselves, not that they need to rely on you in order to make the change.
Which comes back to self-efficacy. Now, the underpinning rule of all of this, like the true watermark of
steps,
MI,
really, wasn't it?
Well, not the 4 steps. I'm going to go with ambivalence, because this is what we're trying to solve. Is this on one side of the equation, of one side of a client's brain, they're going, well, I've got all these reasons not to take action, but very, very, very strong reasons. And then I've got on the other side of the brain all these reasons why I could take action, or should, or will, or did take action. And what we're trying to do is to unwrangle all of this ambivalence. Imagine in a client's brain, you've just got this. Imagine the outline of a skull. Okay, make it like a kid would draw it with Crayolas, like a very clear skull. Okay,
yeah.
And their brain is just this like tangled mess of ambivalence, where the Crayola crayon.
I couldn't change.
Yeah,
what if this happened? What if that happened?
So it's our job through evoking questions and change talk, we're going to unravel this one long line, and it's going to come out of their mouth, because remember, it's all talking, it's a talking therapy, and it just comes down as one super long conformed line of understanding, of figuring out all the reasons to change, and adding weighting to all the reasons why we are going to change, we could change. In fact, I'm just going to start now. And we notice that the more I unravel this ambivalence, the faster I can pull out, those of you on screen, you're pulling out this ambivalence. To start off with, it'll be quite slow, potentially, as we go through like the pre-contemplation, contemplation. The more we can unravel the ambivalence, the faster we get to action.
Yeah, I like that. And there was 4 clear steps to follow inside MI. So to start off with, you had engagement, which is the same as rapport, which we've said a million times. Yep. You start with rapport.
Don't confuse that million times with repetition of yes.
Yeah, exactly. It means that it's congruently the first place to start, right?
Yeah.
Then the next thing was about focus. So knowing where that conversation is going to go. And again, that links in with NLP's understanding of that outcome, right? And
of going, like, I'm here and I want to get to B. I'm here at the beginning of the Yellow Brick Road. We want to get down the Yellow Brick Road to the Colosseum. which would be your NLP or whatever your path on. But you've got to have a focus, not just the macro focus of like in 12 weeks time we're going to be here, but what's the focus of this particular session?
Yeah, nice.
The focus of this particular podcast, this episode, was a breakdown, synopsis and recap of everything we've done so far and bring it to the forefront of your mind. So it's tip of tongue, top of mind. There you go. Cool.
And then we evoke. It needs to be evocative. I couldn't get my words out then. So you go engage, focus, and then evocative. So here, when it's evoking and working with your client, you're using your oars to evoke.
You're using your communication skills, you're thinking about your sensory acuity,
building self-efficacy.
Are they towards or and away from, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and basically asking a very simple world-class question. They give you a response, and based on that response you're going to ask them for more information, tell me more, confirm that's right, paraphrase back, summarize, and explore beyond the surface level answer or the answer they've given and saying, right, based on what you've just said, here's my next question.
Yeah.
So we don't need an extensive list of questions we might ask the client, because the possibilities of all of the answers back from your client are endless. And so depending on the answer will determine your next question.
Yeah, lovely. And then the final step was about planning. So this planning section wasn't just, now I know what I need to do from a nutrition or an exercise point of view, but it was also plan the goal, plan the next actionable step.
Perfect. And I like that because it calls a lot of FITPROs out potentially. I'm just reaching across to get something very quickly because I need a calendar in a minute. But if you think about this, a lot of FITPROs go straight to planning.
Yeah.
Yet we've not engaged, we've not focused, we've not evoked, we've not been through the behavioural aspect. And this might be the setup of consultation 1 and adding a consultation 2 or 3 like we teach inside the FITPRO 31 online program.
Yeah.
And so... There you go. If you grab your I won't edit this bit out, but it means that maybe the action point here is, are you jumping to the planning element too quickly? Are you thinking about what muscles to work or what exercises work best for the quads, when in actual fact it really doesn't matter what exercise the client has or doesn't have, it's whether or not you can get them to do it, or more importantly whether they can get themselves to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what the glue is that holds it all together, right?
Completely.
Which is every single episode that we've spoken about inside season 8. And we've had now, this is our 10th episode, but it's all about what is that extra glue that holds all of this knowledge that you have, all of this confidence that you have as a FITPRO to now go and actually get that into action and therefore results.
So what I really want to know is I want you to jump inside the Parallel Coaching in a Circle. Maybe you've done this before in previous weeks, or maybe this might be your first time of doing it. But I'd love to hear what's your big takeaway from today's session as we've recapped. But also, what's your big takeaway from season 8 as a whole? You could also email us, okay, so that would be info@parallel-coaching.com, or you could message us on our Facebook page or Instagram page. Like, I really want to know, because your feedback gives us clear guidance to move forwards. Now, with that said, moving forwards, I also really want to know is, what do you want in season 9? Ooh. So every season we take a little bit of a shift and we change the way we do things. Now, in season 7, we did every day. In season 6, we did a 4-part episode on kickstarting the new year, you. In season 5, we did the advent calendar of Christmas. In season 4 was all about common clinical conditions.
Yeah, your memory's good.
Okay. Now, what I see as season 9 coming up, I'm not going to say it's going to be a number of episodes. I'm going to keep it open. But what I want to do is I want to have 2 episodes per week. I want one geared towards more of the newly qualified FITPRO, okay, and one towards the trainee FITPRO. There'll be one on a Monday, Tuesday, not decided yet, and one on a Thursday, as always. Now, what I really want to know is, what do you want us to cover? How long do you want the sessions to be? What's the ideal time frame? Do you prefer we're at 1 hour and 2 minutes now, or do you prefer the short 20-minute revision bites? I would also love to get some guest speakers on, not necessarily every week, but I'd really like to get you guys, learners, on, and we explore one subject. Maybe you focus on a particular behaviour change strategy yourself. Maybe you're a CBT therapist. Maybe you're a clinician. Maybe you've been a clinician, a physician in your previous career. Maybe you've gone from had a major transformation in fitness yourself. Like, let's add a new spice to season 9. Okay. And with that, the other side to it is we're actually going to take a 2-week hiatus out of the podcast in order to prep and plan.
And that gives you time to give us some feedback about what you would like over the next season and what type of content and timeframes. But also for you to go back, you might listen to some things from season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 or 8. And then we can join again with you in season 9. But we're going to give a gap.
So obviously we're recording this before, okay? But today you're listening to this. It came live on the 6th of May. So on the 13th and 20th of May, which we usually drop a podcast on the Thursday, there's no podcast. So we will return week beginning the 24th of May is the plan at the moment. So please don't confuse this as we are pausing or stopping the FITPRO sessions. It's far from that. In fact, what we're doing is we're going to add more of a production behind it. We're going to add more variety into FITPRO sessions and make season 9 the best season yet.
And if you already have the habit, the behaviour of listening to this every week, then still keep that going. It's only 2 weeks worth, but still keep that habit going by listening back to certain areas. It allows you to dive into something you're interested in. So if you're not sure what bit to focus on, reach out to us and we can help guide it. So if you're maybe interested in clinical conditions,
Go to season 4.
Or if you're a FITPRO, no, that's not 4?
Season 4, yeah.
Oh, and then if you want to start FITPRO beginning, so if you're brand new FITPRO, season 2. If you are interested in behaviour change, season 8. If you want revision, season 7. So we can kind of help guide you if you do want to. But it's a really nice time for you to keep your habit going and keep that learning process, but just dive back into previous ones we've done.
And with that said, we've got one more action for you to do, is to leave us a 5-star review inside iTunes or any other social media platform. That could be on Facebook, a recommendation, because it's you guys that are driving FITPRO Sessions to be the beast that it is. And we're forever going to be grateful for that. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us.
We will see you bright and breezy
2 weeks' time.
In 2 weeks' time. See you later.
Take care. Bye.
Hi, I'm Neil Bergman.
And I'm Hayley Bergman. Over the last 10 years, we've helped thousands of fitness professionals to get qualified, learn with simplicity, and coach clients with confidence.
We're the first to say that learning and being a FITPRO doesn't have to be hard work, and that with the right structure, support and resources, you can become a confident and knowledgeable fitness professional that is dedicated to more.
So how do you learn, qualify and kickstart as a FITPRO? This is the FITPRO Sessions Podcast with Parallel Coaching.